On January 1, 2025, New Orleans, a city known for its vibrant culture, music, and celebrations, was shaken to its core by a horrifying and senseless act of violence. As thousands gathered on Bourbon Street to ring in the new year, their joy and excitement turned to chaos and despair in an instant. The New Orleans truck attack left 15 people dead, including the perpetrator, and dozens injured, forever changing the lives of those who were there and the city itself. Bourbon Street is one of the most iconic locations in New Orleans, known for its lively nightlife, historic architecture, and constant stream of revelers. It's a hotspot for tourists and locals alike. On New Year's Eve, the street becomes a sea of people celebrating, dancing, and enjoying the music that seems to flow from every corner. The energy is infectious, with jazz bands playing on balconies and confetti raining down as the clock strikes midnight. The night of December 31st, 2024, was no exception. Despite chilly weather, the streets were packed with people eagerly awaiting the start of 2025. Families, friends, and strangers gathered in the spirit of unity and festivity. Local police had set up barricades and deployed officers to manage the crowd, as they do every year during major events. Shortly after midnight, as the crowd was still cheering the arrival of the new year, a black pickup truck barreled through the barricades at the intersection of Bourbon and St. Anne Streets. The vehicle's sudden entry into the pedestrian-only zone caused immediate confusion. Some thought it was a mistake, perhaps a lost driver, but that illusion was quickly shattered. The driver, later identified as 30-year-old Shamsud-Din accelerated into the crowd, mowing down people indiscriminately. Witnesses described the horrifying scene, bodies flying into the air, screams of terror, and the sound of the truck's engine roaring as it plowed forward. Jabbar's rampage continued for several blocks, leaving a trail of devastation in his wake. People tried to scatter, but the dense crowd made it nearly impossible to escape. Some brave individuals attempted to pull others to safety, while others used their own bodies to shield loved ones from the speeding vehicle. Within minutes, police officers stationed nearby sprang into action. They chased the truck on foot and in patrol cars, shouting for Jabbar to stop. When the vehicle finally came to a halt near the 600 block of Bourbon Street, Jabbar exited the truck armed with a handgun. He began firing at officers and bystanders, further escalating the chaos. The ensuing shootout was brief but intense. Officers returned fire, striking Jabbar multiple times. He was pronounced dead at the scene. In the immediate aftermath, emergency services flooded the area, tending to the injured and securing the crime scene. Ambulances transported victims to nearby hospitals, while others were treated on-site by paramedics. The attack left 15 people dead, including Jabbar, and over 30 injured. Among the victims were tourists from across the United States, international visitors, and local residents. The youngest victim was a 10-year-old boy visiting with his family, while the oldest was a 68-year-old jazz musician who had been performing on the street that night. Survivors recounted harrowing stories of their experiences. One woman, who had traveled from Texas with her friends, described being knocked to the ground and trampled as people tried to flee. Another man, a bartender at a nearby establishment, said he used his bar's first aid kit to treat a young woman who had been struck by the truck. The city of New Orleans was left reeling. Mayor LaToya Cantrell declared a state of emergency and held a press conference the following day, calling the attack a cowardly and senseless act of violence. She pledged support for the victims and their families and vowed to strengthen security measures for future events. As investigators delved into Jabbar's background, they uncovered disturbing details. A native of Louisiana, Jabbar had a history of mental health issues and a criminal record that included charges of assault and domestic violence. However, it was his apparent ties to extremist ideology that caught the attention of federal authorities. In the truck, police found an Islamic State flag, along with a manifesto in which Jabbar expressed allegiance to the terrorist organization. The manifesto detailed his grievances against the United States and his desire to carry out an attack in the name of IS. Despite this, investigators found no evidence that Jabbar had direct contact with the group. Instead, they concluded that he had been self-radicalized through online propaganda. The attack reignited debates about domestic terrorism and the role of social media in spreading extremist ideologies. It also highlighted the challenges of identifying and intervening with individuals who pose a threat but lack direct connections to organized groups. For the victims and their families, the pain and loss were immeasurable. Candlelight vigils were held across New Orleans in the days following the attack, with hundreds gathering to pay their respects. Flowers, candles, and handwritten notes were left at makeshift memorials along Bourbon Street. One of the most poignant stories was that of the 10-year-old boy who lost his life. His parents, who had brought him to New Orleans to experience the city's rich culture, spoke at a memorial service, describing him as a bright and curious child who loved music and dreamed of becoming a musician. Their grief was shared by the entire community. Survivors faced not only physical injuries, but also emotional scars. Many reported symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, struggling with flashbacks and nightmares. Local organizations and mental health professionals offered counseling and support services to help them cope. Despite the tragedy, New Orleans, a city that has faced its share of hardships, demonstrated remarkable resilience. Community leaders and residents came together to support one another, proving once again that the city's spirit could not be broken. In the months following the attack, local artists created murals honoring the victims, and musicians organized benefit concerts to raise funds for the injured and their families. The annual Mardi Gras celebrations, which took place just weeks later, were dedicated to the memory of those lost, with floats and performances paying tribute to the victims. The New Orleans truck attack served as a sobering reminder of the threats posed by domestic terrorism and the need for vigilance in public spaces. Law enforcement agencies across the country reviewed their security protocols for large events, implementing new measures to prevent similar attacks. For the people of New Orleans, the tragedy underscored the importance of community and the enduring power of hope and unity. As the city continues to heal, it carries with it the memory of those lost and the resolve to honor their legacy by fostering a safer, more compassionate world. In the words of a local resident who attended a vigil, "They tried to take away our joy, but they could never take away our love for this city and each other. We will remember and we will rebuild."